19th of July, there was a global IT outage which grounded flights, which stalled banking systems, which stalled commerce across the world, stopped healthcare services, completely down to the failure of a company called CrowdStrike who were issuing out an update to their software.
How do you test something like this? I mean, this is an kind of, call it an out-of-band update for an agent that happens automatically. You can't run that through a change process. This particular case is a really kind of weird juxtaposition between actually having a good security posture and updating quickly.
Okay, a security firm has now caused the biggest, probably, outage ever.
I think it was Troy Hunt that said that this is what Y2K should have been.
Yeah,
which was kind of funny.
Yeah. But let's not forget they didn't remove testing. What they did was they relied on a piece of software telling them when it would work. They put it through a piece of software that was supposed to imitate the test and find out whether anything that the update did was supposed to be bad.
If you have a system that's critical for a business to run, imagine having that on one server when no one really knows how it works and you don't patch it because if it breaks, all of your other systems can't talk to each other.
Hello and welcome to this second, possibly unintentionally, in our installments about CrowdStrike. We have our special guest, Dan Cards, who's the founder of, I'm going to say Own Defend, but it's not Own Defend, it's Pwn Defend, isn't it? But yeah, pwning's a sort of hacking thingy. What's it? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Okay.
That's the one.
And as last time, again, for those who haven't seen the previous podcast, worth going to watch. But Dan, if you could just introduce yourself to everybody else as if you were in a pub holding a cold beer.
See, I'm not. I've got a tea. Look, see.
I've got a tea as well. Christian, have you got a?
Yeah.
No.
Coffee. We don't drink tea in Norway. It's black coffee, and that's it.
That's how much. Go, Dan.
So I'm Dan. I'm a security consultant. I run a security consultancy boutique firm, and I specialize in helping organizations protect, detect, and respond and recover for when things go wrong.
Are we allowed to use the term cyber Jedi? I mean, I'm not quite sure.
Do you know what? So somewhere in a meeting that will never see the light of day, there's some well, you can guess where this is, obviously. And it's got Daniel Card, Cyber Jedi Knight. And it has managed, I do sort of play around with deception and stuff as part of my job, but also for fun. Cyber Jedi Knight's been up there. I've had Cyber Ninja Warrior. I've had that in the papers, I think, and I think in some minutes in some classified documents like that. If we can get some fun into the world while talking about all the misery of cybersecurity,
absolutely.
It's a good thing, right?
Do I have to call you Master for the rest of the thing? Yes, Master. You could say to Christian, yes, Padawan. That sort of situation. That's got to be the way forward. My job title is nowhere near as good as that. Christian, we need to work out some job titles. This is not right. It's not right. In the last episode, we discussed the CrowdStrike incident, which you must have been living under a rock if you haven't realized. 19th of July, there was a global IT outage which grounded flights, which stalled banking systems, which stalled commerce across the world, stopped healthcare services, and essentially was predominantly down, completely down to the failure of a company called CrowdStrike who were issuing out an update to their software. We discussed what exactly happened in the last podcast, so please go and recap if you're not sure on that one. But this one really is more about what businesses can do to defend against this, or is there anything that businesses can do to defend against this?
Well, what can they do to defend against the vendor pushing an update that had zero control over, that they didn't test into their business?
Wow. Okay, good. Yeah.
This will be a short one.
Yeah, there might be a short. Nothing.
That's it.
It is. What would they have done other than maybe use a different vendor? And I don't actually think that is the what I would say. But in that instance, there wasn't anything that someone could have reasonably done. The release process was global. It was relatively instant. So defending against that exact scenario on that day was almost impossible.
And we've seen it before. I'm sure I've been on the receiving end of antivirus updates, which essentially is what these were, destroying systems. Or at least,
Yeah, I mean,
at least killing system crash and have to be rebooted.
It deleted all this. Do you remember there was a recent Defender update that deleted all the Office shortcuts, which for like me, I don't care because I just press the Windows key, type and enter and load the app. Like for normal people, they're like, oh, I don't know where the Office has been deleted. And that's a really simple one, right? But we've had it before with blue screens. We've had systems like files deleted, I think, like all kinds of crazy stuff. And that's just the antivirus part. Think about and bear with, I'm pretty sure one of the Windows updates that just came out that started blue screening boxes. So you can't, like I said the last episode, like the three laws of IT, the hardware fails, software has bugs, and humans make mistakes. Like you can't mitigate every single risk in the world.
No, exactly. But maybe what we are saying is the fact that this was the scope of the impact, something about the way that we're building our IT infrastructure within our businesses, because it was really dramatic. I mean, I think the initial figures were 8.5 million machines worldwide failed, which is an insane number.
Yeah, and I think that's they reckoned it was about 1%, but with the crash reporting, which isn't on by default, it would have been loads. And also the net impact, right? So you take down one PC, it affects 10 passengers or whatever the numbers are. If you take out a DNS server or both your DNS servers, again, this is one of the things where your applications, but let's pick, I'm going to pick, you've got a Java application running like air traffic control, right? Probably a semi-realistic scenario. That might be reliant upon a DNS server that's running Windows somewhere.
Absolutely.
Right? So you've got all these interdependencies to consider. I mean, it was mad. I mean, and I mean this, it is a horrible incident. I feel bad for everyone across the stack, right? No one would have wanted that to have occurred. Maybe the Russians or the Chinese, but
they probably use Windows as well. So maybe they didn't want it to.
Windows is everywhere, right? It's and that's not a good or bad thing. It's just a thing.
Yeah.
But CrowdStrike isn't everywhere. Okay, there's an interesting point, and this is why obviously I was mentioning some countries, but this demonstrates a weakness in architecture and model of computing, where you have cloud services with remote code execution capability on devices. And I was starting to talk about it a minute ago, but that was how many ways are there that this could happen in society, right? In terms of the computing, because you've got OV definition updates. Well, we already know that you can do it that way. EDR, well, that definitely can do it.
So EDR is endpoint detection and response. Response. So like your laptops.
So endpoint detection response is the CrowdStrike agent. You'll hear EDR, MDR, which is managed detection and response, and XDR, which is other stuff, and endpoints.
X-Men detection and response, that sort of stuff.
Yeah. That'll be much cooler, right? Although they do love their cartoons, so maybe we can get some better stuff. Blue screen of Death Warrior.
New from Marvel.
Yeah, they definitely should focus on the goodies, not the baddies.
I've got to say, it sounds more like Doctor Doom, actually, to be fair, at this point. But there you go.
We've just had Keanu Reeves appear in Palo Alto adverts. So
I know.
Maybe people should spend less money on weird marketing stuff and more money on testing. That's just an idea, right? I'm not going to throw it out there as well. You want an action figure for Russian bad guy who ransomwares hospitals, or should we test our updates? I'm going to go for the second option.
I was going to say, is it me or the CrowdStrike are not a small company? They're like what, second in the world? The second largest dedicated security provider in the world. So I think is it Palo Alto number one and they're number two, or is that just stock market price?
I don't know. If I'm honest, I think Microsoft must be. But regardless,
Microsoft blur their security impact there, don't we, with everything else? It's like
tools and their solution suite, etc. It's not everywhere for no reason. It's their capabilities great. I don't personally like their idolization of threat actors, but they give out good threat intel. The tools are really good. But from that point of view, no one is sitting there going it's good. It's it is one of the leading products, if not one of the leading one. You've got Sentinel-1, you've got the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, you've got CrowdStrike. No one is going to be firing you for buying any of those free, generally speaking.
They're the IBM of the modern security age on that basis.
Yeah, I mean, but now, look, 40% down. What's
so are we all buying CrowdStrike shares now? Is that the word?
So I posted the DIT or the whatever the graph picture is because, and I mean, I wouldn't.
Yeah, we're not going to be in a situation where we're advising people to buy shares. That's not a thing. I mean,
like I'm sitting there going, like, everyone always says, like I said last time, right? If you get ransomware, you might see a dip. It generally recovers, right? And no one likes me saying that because it ruins the whole thought of saying, "Oh, do security or you'll die." But in this instance, it's like, ooh, it hasn't stopped and it hasn't recovered, so it's down massively.
Yep.
It's still up here. It's again, I don't spend huge amounts of time looking, but it's up still. It's not like they've lost money over the year in share price. They are massive. Their stuff is in all the places where you wouldn't want to have this level of impact.
So airlines, hospitals, banks, sort of payment. Right. Okay. Yeah.
They've got government customers. And just to throw this out there as well, though, like I know, so you got the CrowdStrike bit. We've just had Azure DOST, right? I was saying the same before. They supply governments. Like all of this stuff is everywhere. So I think it is a kind of like, yes, there's a CrowdStrike incident, and yes, it was bad. I mean, it was really bad.
Yeah, I got to say, I didn't want to be an IT guy on that weekend. It has to be said.
No, I'm not kidding. I think I made a joke literally on Twitter. I was like, my customers run MDE. That's
cue flame war.
Exactly. I mean, I was sitting there and I was like in incidents, and this is an incident. The important thing is looking after people. It's, the memes were amazing. It was funny while terror is going on, right? Yeah. It's, and I feel for everyone like impacted, So
it's not their fault. At the end of the day, is it?
No, but this stuff can happen, and I think this is an important thing. There's a lot of people. Oh, how do you avoid this happening? In this instance, you couldn't have done. You would need CrowdStrike need to do better testing.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think the key thing here is that the CrowdStrike offer. It's not like somebody updated the application. Somebody updated the definitions, really, or did a small engine update. So this wasn't like, oh yeah, fine. This is a proper rollout. We're gonna test it on these machines first. We're gonna test it on these. This is not what the businesses should have been doing. That's what CrowdStrike should have been doing, but they didn't. They essentially ran it through some software that said, oh, it's okay, and that's it.
Yeah. So what can you do? And we rely upon third parties all the time, right? So I use Office 365. When Azure was being DOSed and then self-DOSing, I believe, from the incident response report was being...
What? So essentially, Azure got denial of service attacked. Yeah? I'm not aware.
My friend monitors like hacktivist spaces, and they like to claim stuff that they don't do, but we haven't seen who's if anyone's taken responsibility. Azure was being DOSed by a threat actor.
Right.
Azure's DOS protection then DOSed Azure itself, according to MS, right? So you send one attack, and then the protection platforms locked it all out or amplified it or whatever. So the Azure services were down. Like I said, I clicked on the login to DoD Azure, and I couldn't even get the login screen to appear. So I'm assuming they had a problem.
Oh, true.
This stuff's everywhere, right? And whether you say, Windows as an OS or cloud platforms, Azure, Office 365, G Suite, whatever, it doesn't, the actual bits don't matter at the end of the day. Our society is built upon an ever increasing reliance upon a smaller number of service providers. Right? When Azure goes down, a lot of stuff breaks. Someone said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to have a cup of tea and go sunbathing." But Teams worked. I mean, God.
Surely one's on the same platform, isn't it?
I mean, I like Teams. It gets so much hate, but I'm like, I use it, so
it's a platform.
Yeah, no, I don't nothing wrong with it. No objections to Teams.
Well, I use everything, and I do like to sometimes cause a bit of a a laugh online because I'm like, oh, let's tell people. Like, I even did this. It got like 2 million hits or something. I RDP'd from one of my Macs into a Windows box, and I had to do it, right? Because I needed to run Visio to do a diagram. And I was like, I'll put a joke saying that I've installed Windows on my new MacBook Pro. And the amount of hate I think I got from that was hilarious. And obviously lots of people realised I was making a joke. But like when we centralise, okay, so like in this instance, like part of this was like, what can you do as an end customer of this product set? And the answer for that instance was you could run around and get barcode readers and start trying to work out a recovery strategy. You couldn't have prevented it. What do we do market pressure-wise as customers? That's a different thing. Like going back and saying, you do it this way, we don't want you to do it that way. You can obviously send a message with your feet and your money. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a great idea.
Yeah, no, this is the thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you were hit, right? Say if you're Delta. Oh. I mean, they were down forever. How they have been down for that long, considering most people recovered. I was doing polls every day. How far are you recovered? Are you impacted? And please don't respond if you don't use CrowdStrike. Polls are weird, aren't they? And like you can see, if you've got 100,000 machines that you need to enter the BitLocker recovery key and you've got distributed teams and stuff, it's not going to be instant, right?
No.
Because this is not an event that I've ever seen on a risk register where you go, do you know what? I need to put my recovery keys everywhere. It now will be in lots of people's risk registers that either exist in their heads or in the actual documents that may sit on SharePoint or whatever. But it's not really a planned for event. That obviously will change. I'm sure there will be huge pressure from a load of different spaces. You're going to have government pressure. You're going to have regulatory pressure on CrowdStrike.
Yeah, but that's not okay. But you can't. The point is, okay, fine. CrowdStrike made a mistake, but in this situation, surely CrowdStrike are now the least likely to ever make that mistake again. But if you look at Palo Alto or any of the other key competitors for CrowdStrike, they've not made this mistake yet. All they're doing is slightly sniggering in the corner, I suppose, to a certain extent.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of them are.
But they may well make this mistake at some point. They may just think their software's better, therefore they don't need to worry about it.
Well, and I'm going to say this. Sorry, Fortinet. Fortinet, obviously, like writing software, it appears that has remote code execution and all as a feature. But they published quite quickly, this is how we do testing and updates. So, like, what have we got in networks that update like this stuff automatically? Your web browsers use APIs to check websites, so that's a point of risk. Your antivirus obviously does definition updates. Relatively rapid frequency.
And this is for almost any business. Yeah.
Like this is not just the business, but people. So Windows Defender or third-party AV product, your web browsers, and on your mobile, you're going to have a similar thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've got that, and then we go, okay, well, then we've got EDR and MDR agents, and we've got RMM tools. All of these tend to run at system level, so high levels of access. So they work. And then you've got like what about my network? Well, I've got IPSs with signatures in. I've got firewalls that do reputation checking. I've got API and integrations. So like, it's very hard to do what I say we used to do, because it still isn't like gone, but you'd have like general purpose networks, right? It used to have level 2, like a low side network. So general purpose, I would say, is just and then you do like some secure environments, varying different levels of assurance, etc. And the difference is massively dramatic, if that makes sense. In the general commercial world, people don't know where their systems are. They don't know what stuff's talking to. It's all very
open.
Enable the business.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you go, enable the business, but don't get pwned. You're talking about, I want to know that, data flows in from like low to high, not from high to low as a general rule of thumb. So you start getting really different views on the world. But generally speaking, like people live in a really highly connected world where functionality is required, where availability is key, and integrity and confidentiality are lower down on the on the mindset.
Yeah, because essentially they assume that everything that is within their network is by definition protected because they've got a firewall or an IPS or something else on those lines. They've got this protection, therefore everything's okay. And that's not remotely the case. But
it's also a business impact point of view. Like there's MRI machines that want to run on Windows. Okay, so like, would you care about having the MRI machine do the scan and losing the data, or just not having the scan capability? You're probably going to say, I'd rather have a scan and the data get lost. I'm not saying that anyone would want that, but if you had to pick, you're going to pick. And again, going into a non-medical, it's like, does your business operate and does it make revenue? And you keep going? Yes, we lost some data. Okay, you're going to get fined. You're not going to go out of business because of it, probably. So availability is like, for most orgs, king. So it's how do we do this in a connected world when that is the complexity, the diversity levels are interesting. I don't know whether we've got the right level. Have we got too much of too many eggs in baskets?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, but this is it. I mean, there were going to be single points of big issue with regard to any network, and we talked about it briefly earlier. Is the fact that your DNS server goes, well, frankly, every system in your network goes, because without DNS, nothing works. So now, and to a certain extent, we have highly available DNS, but essentially, if someone decided to go and just mess with DNS, that would destroy any network very, very simply, really quick.
Largely, like and don't get me wrong, this is not every network. Some universities, for example, are running behind with weird custom stuff because nerds. In a nice way.
Because nerds. I love that.
Yeah, because nerds. They really do. Some people at universities have a lot of time to go and do some really cool.
Do they have a goatee beard and sandals as well? Do they
people with that kind
of I have seen very familiar people as well. Yes. Lovely guys as well, actually, but I love the goatee beard and sandals look. It's really good.
But like most most networks, they're called like DNS servers and Windows boxes. If we have to do just a blanket statement, and even if you have got like segregated app zones, at some point they're probably going to go and need to send some DNS traffic. So you're right. Take out DNS. It's a bit like putting a crowbar across a rail track. It's going to cause a problem.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, exactly. But the point really here is, again, we're saying, is this is, can we design our way out of this from the point of view that what happened in this case from a business perspective was the fact that this was an operating system related failure, not created by the operating system manufacturer in this case, but this operating system related failure then took out fundamental components that make any business work, or that make the business work. Is there a way that the business can design its architecture to make that less common, or is it frankly pointless trying it because it's too expensive?
Yeah, and this is right. So in some designs and implementations, I've put different kit in different positions. We do different zones. We have different tooling. Like if you have a security team and you've got the business and you're in a non-integrated mode, right? You don't want to be being the same as the business, right? You want to have kit that's different if you're on purpose, right? Yeah. So you want diversity.
Exactly. Not the dance troupe.
Diversity increases complexity and largely increases cost.
Absolutely. And it requires training and all this sort of stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Someone was like, deploy 2 EDR agents. I'm like, what? I'm like, that doesn't work. Like, we've already got a position, like I said before, about like security investment is not where it needs to be broadly, because most people in leadership positions in organizations they're not computer people, are they? And I think that's true in government.
Probably a good thing. Let's be honest. It's probably a good thing, Dan, to be honest. You don't want a group of IT guys running everything. That would be horrendous.
Can you imagine if the security industry ran the world, it wouldn't work. No one would say yes to anything.
Exactly.
It'll be like, no, can't do that. I told you so. I know everything.
And they'd all have dogs named after Star Trek characters or something else. It wouldn't be good.
Kind of takes me back to a few episodes ago. I think I said something like, security is what puts the no in innovation. Right.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
So that's kind of the same thing, because a secure environment is an environment that doesn't change by definition. If it doesn't change and you've secured everything and nothing ever happens, it's still secure. But the real world is it happens.
Yeah.
All the time, everywhere.
And we're finding new stuff all the time, everywhere.
So you're never gonna get to what you might call an actual secure state because you don't really know.
I don't think that exists. I've done a blog before, which is absolute security or 100% security is like only the Sith talking absolutes or some Star Wars reference, right? And it's not that that isn't how it works. I try to use the word safety and quality, right? That's how I try and look at cyber security, because people say is it secure? Well, from what? Against? From what? Against whom? What resources? What motivations? What scenarios? And like, there's a lot of stuff where if someone is motivated to go and do something bad, they can do it with a brick. They can do it with a computer. And largely because the world, most people are not like cyber wizards. You can go and brick some. Yeah, we have to try and mix it up, right? There'll just be this weird mix of every fantasy story, security people running around with laptops. But like you can attack stuff in all kinds of ways. You can put 1 million locks on your front door and then you can drive a van through the wall, right?
Or go through the window.
Yeah, or through the window, or just wait till the person opens it and then go and run at the door. There's 1 million ways to break into places, but everyone's like, "Oh, I've got really good locks," and I'm like, cool."
What about the windows? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did you replace the glass? Yeah.
And when we look at like networks and we look at instance, and this goes back into the what can you do to prevent, right? So you sit there going, well, what are the common things that go wrong? And this is what we do when we look at an enterprise. We say, look, I need to understand what your business is. Let's use houses. How's your house built? How many rooms have you got? What doors are there? Have you got CCTV? All the usual bits. You need to know what it is. If you don't understand what it is and how it works, you're never going to defend it well. But how are you going to protect yourself from going wrong? Well, you're going to focus on stuff that we know is used by bad guys. Or in the software testing and release space, we're going to say, do you know what happens? When we release an untested update, it usually breaks stuff. So let's do some testing. I mean,
well, you need a job. You need a job at a service provider or a security provider I've heard of.
I got banned from LinkedIn for a very brief period of time because I changed my name to CrowdStrike and put my job title as CrowdStrike Release Consultant, something like that. Anyway. I really wasn't, I do, like I said, I do deception on, like, for an educational point of view. I'm clearly not going to be able to do it anymore on LinkedIn. They are lovely and have restored my access. Thank you, everybody.
It was only a joke, guys. Get a sense of humour. That's the situation.
What's funny is I found accounts named with first name terrorist on LinkedIn that's still actually active. Fake Boris Johnson account, etc. Anyway, I digress. But
wow.
Yeah, how do we defend stuff? And part of the defensive sort of piece is, are we testing? And I mean, I'm not even going to try and remember back what version. It would be like Microsoft Operations Framework would have said to test. It's not like it's going to be before I was born that stuff says, here is a book that says when you deploy anything, you should test it. It's not rocket science, is it?
Well, I would wager that's engineering 101 regardless of IT. So go on, Christian.
Yeah. But the problem in this particular case, right, is, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned this in the last one as well, is the ones that have an actual active security posture by using CrowdStrike and BitLocker are the ones that get most hurt by this. Yeah. Because they've actually done something which by definition is the right thing to do.
They've got security in depth.
Yes. So and then again, how do you test something like this? I mean, this is an kind of, call it an out of band update for an agent that happens automatically. You can't run that through a change process, because then you would never ever be protected to the point where you want to be, because you want the latest updates quickly.
Yeah.
So this particular case is a really kind of weird juxtaposition between actually having a good security posture and updating quickly, and that's what got you into this mess. Because the vendor did something wrong. So what CrowdStrike really did here was kind of penalize everyone who's actually trying to do the right thing. And how do you defend against that? I mean, that's impossible.
And
I
think it's a really good point. Have they scared? I mean, like I said, I think this is something that the security industry struggles to talk about. It is really hard today in 2024 to get organizations to do the right things in the security space. It is incredibly hard, right?
It's expensive. It costs more money, and it gives them less perceived value, and it takes more time. So why would they do it? That sort of stuff.
Yeah, not just that. I mean, it's just people until they get. It's usually until they have an incident, and even then, I've done stuff where it's like, guys, you really need to change your thought process and your governance around how you deliver digital services, and still sometimes it's like you go back and look again, you're like, you haven't changed, have you? It's really difficult. So I think that what happens that a security firm has now caused the biggest probably outage ever in the history of like internet-based computing.
Yeah, I think it was Troy Hunt that said that this is what Y2K should have been.
Which
was kind of funny. Yeah.
How are people going to respond to that? Are they going to throw the baby out with the bathwater? Are people going to start doing things that are even more insecure than they already do? Like, what is the negative point? And this is the most boring response, to what should people do? Well, apply market pressure, apply assurance, but largely for the CrowdStrike thing, maybe they shouldn't be doing too much.
No, agreed.
Individual org level. As a society, what would we need to do? I mean, that's clearly work, right? I mean,
it's difficult, isn't it? I must admit, I'm sort of thinking, well, if they've, this is obviously one vendor's fault. The only thing that we could, in theory, do is to sort of say, right, okay, well, we could maybe diversify our infrastructure somewhat to the extent whereby we have less dependency on individual vendors, but that is going to require an awful lot of investment, an awful lot of time, an awful lot of training, an awful lot of desire. And realistically, that's not possible. So the other thing we do is we save a bit of money as a business. We save a bit of money for when this happens again, because it may well at some point, because we're not getting less interdependent. We're getting more interdependent as we go forward.
So look at, for instance, Delta that you mentioned, Dan, right? The check-in systems at the airport. It's one computer accessing some system remotely. It's just a dumb end device. It doesn't really actually have the software on it. It's just a terminal to get the access. When that gets hit and gets turned off or blue screened in this case, the people working at the gate can't actually access the system, even if it's online still, right? So in order to kind of mitigate for that, you would need to have two access devices at the gate with different vendors so they can switch them around if something happens. What's the likelihood of an airline doing that? It doesn't happen.
I mean, and that's a really good point. You've just doubled, if not more, the complexity, the cost, the value for something that is a one in however many years event.
You're better off saving up, aren't you?
I think the availability thing here, from an accident point of view, is one thing, right? And some stuff just goes wrong. I know people don't like to hear that, but it's a fact of life.
Yeah, exactly.
So there is that whole, make sure you're prepared, make sure you've got the equipment. There are cool things, like I said, QR code scanners, barcode scanners. I've put a request into the Intune team to say, can you make it so that we can do a report that generates barcodes and QR codes against PC name serial numbers, so that you've got stuff out of the Intune console rather than having to write scripts and do all the jiggery pokery. So I think you can be prepared. You can look at how you do things. I think there's definitely the putting the pressure on to vendors to make sure they are assuring you they're doing it the right way.
Yeah, certainly.
That's important. Assurance is a really odd space, I find. Like, you want to get the right balance between being told that it's okay, because trust me, a lot of people will tell you anything, and then testing, right? And again, lots of orgs can't do the testing part. You'll see loads of third-party risk management, TPRM stuff, where people are filling in questionnaires and, doing bits. But the reality is unless you go and do assurance against the system and test it actually, you'll just say, yeah, mate, it's good. Trust me, bro. And that's essentially what CrowdStrike's model was for this. They can obviously change that. They can re-architect how this releases. They can make the content updates not have this architecture. They can have it so that they're fast, but not quite so fast. They can obviously put testing into their process. They can obviously start actually testing stuff. But
let's not forget they didn't remove testing. What they did was they relied on a piece of software telling them when it would work. They put it through a piece of software that was supposed to imitate the test and find out whether anything that the update did was supposed to be bad. But software failed.
I think that's
software didn't.
I think that's generous, and I think what they did is they wrote some software that says this is the structure of this data. Okay, if it is, then go. Yeah. That's an assumption by my point, but
it sounds like that when they talk about the validator thing. So
validation is again the old language and wording's funny, isn't it? To me, I think they said is the format of this file the correct structure, not whether or not the content of the file will be fine.
It's likely to impact other systems, yeah.
But that's the other thing. Well, what happens when something else loads this content? So I would struggle to believe that they actually tested this even on VMs, but definitely not on live boxes with normal configs or general configs deployed. If they had, I can't imagine to see this. So they can do changes, absolutely. I think to make this more robust. I do think it's a shame in some instances because I really do. I think this has caused a lot of negative impact. That's obvious.
Oh no, massive amount.
It might cause a lot of negative perception impact, and I think it might make the job of what I think is already difficult anyway of saying to people, "Can you make us help make it more safe?" I think they're going to be more resistant to that, and it was already quite bad anyway. How we maybe we can spin it. If we do this again, then we'll help stop the security products from denial of servicing you. I don't know. Do you get my point? Like, it's already a competitive, constrained, high challenge space, and this might make it worse for people like me and obviously then society as a result.
Look at the kind of recent. Now the CrowdStrike thing wasn't really a security incident as such. It's an outage because of an update. So it wasn't an attack or something like that, right? It's just updates gone wrong. Volume 1,
volume 75, probably. But let's try. Just the most effective so far.
Yeah, well done, right? But if you look at the general trend of what's been happening in what's been exploitable recently on the public-facing side of things, it's mostly security products, right? It's kind of the net scalers and the Fortinet things and everything that's supposed to secure your access to an internal resource is in many cases what's being used to access those resources illegally.
But that makes a certain amount of sense, though, doesn't it? Because you're essentially attacking the gate.
Yes.
So therefore, you can't. We talked about ESX vulnerabilities as well recently with regard to that. But the point is, you've got to get into the network to be able to attack the ESX environment. So therefore, all of these antivirus or these sort of malware companies are essentially trying to attack the gateway first. So everything that they will be researching will be based upon that.
Yeah.
So I've got a few things on this, right? And I'll try and quote stats and be relatively accurate. But like 90% of breaches, according to CISA, I think, exclamation mark, exception, whatever, they're identity based, right? Yeah. So they are stolen stroke valid credential scenarios. So we have this huge chunk of incidents which are caused by stolen creds, either from malware, that's like they call it info stealers, that go through and rip out all the credentials from your browsers and cookies and stuff like that. You've got the phishing that occurs to go and again steal your username and passwords. And then we've got into like the 10%, which is the software vulnerability and X space, like moving into that 0-day space. So it's important, I guess, to think about like what incidents look like. And everyone gets really bored because it's like passwords and authentication. It's like, roll out MFA. If you've got a gateway in, at least have MFA on it. Then you've got, I won't try and guess the exact percent. Then we've got what Christian's saying about, then you've got your VPNs that actually are vulnerable because they are sometimes not put together very well. So you've got that sort of like 19 to 95% of the world now of your incidents is caused by the boring password bit, which is not boring to me. I think it's wonderful from an offensive and defensive point of view. But and then you've got your security products at your gateway to your network, and they're let down. So combine that with your EDR agent has just blue screened, say most of the world, but a chunk of the world, right? And your VPNs at the edge of your firewall letting the bad guys come in and then ransomware you. It all sounds rather grim, doesn't it? And
just a tad. Yeah, you need to work on your motivational speaking, to be honest, Dan. No, it's not selling it.
But I think, okay, and to counter that then, it does sound grim because partly there is a reality that the security that people see in films or they see people talk about, a lot of that isn't the reality that you face.
No,
and this isn't specialist inside knowledge. You can look in the news every day, minute, hour, someone's getting breached. There's a new ransomware event on something like a hospital, local authorities, something critical like a water facility. Like it's everywhere because this stuff is a lot more fragile than people think it is. The good news about it though is that it doesn't have to be that way. Like I said, 90% of stuff is creds. So if you put some effort, sort creds out. I mean, it's really difficult because, again, tell someone your past. Like, if you look at passwords, they're really easy to guess. Like, I've done password audits on hospitals. It's scary as hell.
I bet it's not just as scary as hell. I bet the amount of churn that they get on doctors and nurses and various bits and bobs. I bet there's loads of accounts that are still open that have been there for years and all this sort of business.
I say it's not funny at all. Again, I do defensive and offensive. So on some instances, I have sort of sick humor because I find stuff and I'm like, that is the stupidest way I've got in. I've done stuff where I've right-clicked on a file as a receptionist, clicked edit in Notepad, and then I've got domain admin credentials in front of me. That is my hacking capability that I used, which was opening a document in Notepad. I am now the king of the network. So if I either walk in or if I've managed to get a access method, I can become, network God mode pretty quick. And that's not an exception. That's the baseline. It's not. Once you get into a network, most networks, I would say 90%. I think Hacking Dave reckons 80, but whatever. Like the majority of orgs, if you get line of sight into a domain controller, 89% of the time you're going to be domain admin without a huge amount of skill. So we've got this like sort of position of everything's fragile and more risky than people probably imagine. And then we've got if you deploy CrowdStrike or, kernel level agents and you put VPN appliances to do security, actually that may cause you availability loss. So how do non-nerd people, right? Non-techies, non-cyber people, how do people rationalize this?
I believe you can say normal people at this point. Normal people is okay.
That's normal people. Like normalies, right? That's the. But how do people view it? And I go and talk to people about this stuff. Yeah, I mean, my missus calls me a muggle, but I think she's like, I'm a wizard and you're a muggle, Dan. But in the cyber world, we do the same, right? It's like, but how do people rationalize this? And like I said, the whole percentage of spends and what bits, it's really difficult, isn't it? And will this have an impact on people's perceptions of saying, well, I haven't been hacked for 5 years, but I did have CrowdStrike, and that actually just caused me to lose multiple millions.
Or the other side of that is when the security products are the ones that cause you issues, that's not going to help people get funding to buy any security product anywhere at any time. So I don't think I should name who I'm talking about, but there was another airline that wasn't hit by the CrowdStrike thing. According to some inside info that I got, that was pretty much because they don't update anything anyway. So they was clear of it, right? And that doesn't really incentivize that company to actually spend more on securing their stuff.
They're patting themselves on the back for having a far weaker security posture. Good work.
We saved money and we didn't get affected by it. That's a perception problem.
That happened in the SolarWinds incident, right?
Yeah.
I had customers, and I said, "You're okay?" And they said, "Yeah, we're good, mate. That SolarWinds product, we haven't updated that for forever."
That's not a good thing.
But then think about this. I'll give an example, and again, my brain just while I try and make sure I'm saying the right thing. If you have a system that's critical for a business to run, like the arteries of a business, right, that communicate data everywhere, imagine having that on one server where no one really knows how it works, and you don't patch it because if it breaks, all of your other systems can't talk to each other. And that is so much more common than people will admit.
Oh no, I'm completely with that. I mean, I must admit, there's the amount of businesses I've been to and seen whereby, generally speaking, quite often it can be a manufacturing thing where they have an old manufacturing system that runs their key manufacturing components, but they can't afford to buy new key manufacturing components, and they're over the ringer with regard to the way that the system is. It's like, well, oh yeah, we can sell you another one, Mr. Customer, for 50 grand. And they're like, it's a Windows box. I'm not buying that for 50 grand. So you end up with, I don't know, Windows ME running a manufacturing piece of kit. And it's been out of, I don't know, any degree of support for the last 6 years or something silly like that. And they're still running it. You know, the amount of times that happens, because businesses just need it to work. It's got to work. So therefore, it's fine.
The more critical a system is, the harder it is to change it if you don't keep changing it, right? So
exactly, yeah.
You know, I mean, and it does. I've taken systems offline, and you can end up feeling sick while doing it, right? I remember as well, like chopping a virtual hard drive down in size because we had some capacity issues somewhere, and one of my colleagues had put the wrong size in, so. And this was like, he luckily hadn't got to the point where data was, so we fixed it. But it's really difficult. So when you do changes in business, security or not security related, if you do changes and you often encounter a hostile environment to negative positions, right? So if something goes wrong, you suddenly become really averse to wanting to drive change. And I most of the work I do with orgs is change. And sometimes it's like, it's so negative that you're like, good luck, because you've got to improve things. You have to change them. And there is, again, this balance between safety, quality, speed, cost, value, and, people say, oh, we know everything. Oh, well, we don't. That's not, no. Everyone has incidents. Everyone has problems. Things go wrong, even down to weird power stuff, right? Like, someone's power supply to their building might not work the way it should, or someone plugged something in temporarily and left it there. So there's all this technical debt, there's all this challenge. And I think that's sort of like the whole reason. That's why my really boring statement of what should you do if you're running CrowdStrike? Maybe nothing. Because if you said, oh, I'm going to change my EDR, you've then got to retrain everyone. You've got to take the old one out. You've got to go through the sales process and the purchasing process, the assurance, all of the work. And I'm not saying that people might want to not. I'm not saying not to do it, but it just seems like it's like, look, they had one outage. Let's be realistic. They need to change. Maybe other don't. And there's probably things that businesses should be focusing on, like their passwords and their MFA or lack of. There's all this other stuff that is like, why don't you go and spend some time doing that, not chopping CrowdStrike off?
Yeah, there's no guarantee that it doesn't happen with someone else at some other point in time. So this time it happened to be them. Next time it might be someone else. And if you're really unlucky, you're moving away from CrowdStrike now because of this. You move to something else. And then 3 months down the line, they do something wrong and you're hit by that as well. So there are no guarantees anywhere.
And McAfee did this before, didn't they? So I think really it's just generally, I think organizations and people generally, and like you said, I think people need to pay a little bit more attention. I think they need to pay a little bit more care. I'm not a gardener, but I use gardening as an example. If you don't look after your garden, it gets covered in weeds, the animals come and eat your stuff, and it gets wrecked, right? And that's largely how I see networks, is that lots of people's networks are not well loved. And this stuff is society impacting. If you take out computer systems, I think in the UK you've only got about 3 days of food, so good luck. I
remembered you were talking about the disk size being wrong and stuff like that. I just remembered a story from quite a few years ago. I was working in a data center locally here, messed about with some cabling and some rack chassis and some stuff, and things went offline, which weren't supposed to. So I was in the data center working with this stuff, and this woman came running in, screaming at me, "What have you done?" "I haven't done anything. I'm just fixing the patching and whatever." "Well, we can't get people in the ground." I was like, "Get people in the ground?" "Yeah, the burial system for the whole system of the western part of Norway is down. It doesn't work anymore. So right now we can't actually bury people." And I was with cables in my hands. I think I better fix this.
I'm going to say,
right?
Is this the dead center of Norway? That sort of stuff, is it?
Exactly. Yeah, right. So there are physical impacts to what we're doing, right? And sometimes bad things happen, but we have to deal with them and move on. Bad things happen in the kind of physical world all the time. We don't ban cars because someone drives one of them into a wall.
We don't even ban large aircraft because their windows fly out. So let's not go there. So
No.
So yeah, that's
So
mentioning no names.
Well, but yeah, I mean, there is inherent risk with everything.
Yep,
absolutely everything. And we can kind of, if one car from one manufacturer has an issue, we don't ban cars.
But okay, so I suppose let's just sum it up to finish off. So I think Dan, I'll let you finish off first. So just to briefly summarize from a business perspective with regard to the CrowdStrike incident, your advice would be
so plan for failure. Right, that's how we make sure that if we do have a negative event occur, which you probably will, that you can recover. Cover off the foundations. From the CrowdStrike point of view, you've really got to think about, if you want to make a change, is that really going to give you net positive business impact? Probably it's best to go and work with CrowdStrike to help them understand that you would like their processes changed and you don't want this to happen again, etc. So that's my kind of view of don't throw the baby out of the bathwater.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, agreed. Christian, thoughts?
Yeah, it's pretty much the same. I also hope that this incident will actually make companies and businesses include more like endpoint access devices into the DR plans.
Yeah, right? Very good point. Yeah.
What I see a lot of customers using a lot of money and time and effort into having redundant data centers, managing different sites and everything. But if something like this happens on all their endpoints, that doesn't help them at all.
Yeah.
They have a data center there, it's working, it's good, no one can access it.
Yeah,
because they don't have endpoints. So at least have some sort of response plan for how you deal with a massive outage on your endpoint devices as well.
Agreed. Because very good thoughts.
That's something that's very often missed in the disaster recovery planning.
Cool. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I'd say the same. I think at the end of the day, I agree. I think really businesses should not let this stop them doing the right thing with regards to security. And I completely agree with the comments earlier on about the fact that, yeah, this might put people off from doing more security stuff, but they definitely shouldn't. And I'm with you, Dan, in the fact that if people spend more time just thinking about their passwords and things of that nature, and the most obvious entry points, they're the ones that where they're going to get the best return on their investment with regard to securing their environment. But I'd just like to say thanks very much, Dan, for spending the time with us today. That I thought was great fun. And thank you, Christian, for joining in as always.